In this video, I'm going to show you how to generate leads on LinkedIn. And this is important because when you know how to generate leads on LinkedIn, you can increase your sales opportunities. It has a high ROI compared to other customer acquisition channels. And it's super, super simple, high qualified leads. Let's get into it. So I'm going to start with why LinkedIn, and then I'm going to get into the how. So feel free to scrub if you just want the how. But the why for LinkedIn is pretty simple. On LinkedIn, there are an abundance of just highly qualified leads over on LinkedIn. A large majority of the people over there are often business owners. So if you're somebody who's maybe a consultant or an agency owner or service provider, you want to get in touch with more business owners, that's kind of like the number one place to find them very easily. So that's kind of my first reason for why I really like LinkedIn. The second main reason I like LinkedIn is because it's a place people go to do business. So it's very normal to reach out, try to connect with people, and offer services. I think a lot of people, especially in the consulting space or the coaching space, they get into like DMing on Instagram or Facebook or something like that. And then they're like off put when people are angry that they have pitched them on those channels. And it's because those channels are mostly for socializing, looking at pictures of your cats, looking at your kids or your friends or whatever. LinkedIn is kind of different. LinkedIn, when you reach out to somebody and say, hey, I have something that I think would be interesting for you. I help people with, social media marketing, for instance. And I wanted to show you what we can do for you, how we helped XYZ person do something. Your worst case scenario is typically somebody just saying, hey, not interested right now. Maybe hit me up next quarter. Or, hey, it's something I'm not in the market for right now. You get less people kind of off put, where a lot of times in like Facebook DMs or Instagram DMs, one of the reasons I didn't like it, and it's not really my favorite channel for customer acquisition, depending on what you do, is that you'll reach out to somebody and they're like, hey, I'm like, leave me alone. Go away. Stop spamming, right? It's a little bit more work in my experience. So if you're offering a service for business owners, I think LinkedIn is the place to hang out. So that's enough preamble. Let's get into how to generate leads on LinkedIn for your business right now. Okay. So we have kind of three strategies here for how to get leads for LinkedIn. Okay. We're going to start our three steps, as it were. So we're going to stay focused on these three steps. If you do these three things, you'll have a lead gen system for LinkedIn by the end of this video. Cool. All right. So first thing is audience that we want to focus on. Second thing is messaging. And then the third thing is your results and numbers. How do you know if it's working or not? Okay. So let's get into each of these one by one. So when you're building an audience, there's a few things you want to think about. Okay. So when it comes to building an audience on LinkedIn, you want to think about what type of customer are you going for? And there's a lot of different filtering options in the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is what you would use to find these leads. If you want a video on how to more detailed go into Sales Navigator, I have a whole like 30-minute breakdown on how to use that. Okay. But when you're in Sales Navigator, you want to think about a couple of parameters when you're looking for potential clients. Okay. So the first thing is like, how big is the company, right? So size, right? Are they a one-person company? Are they a 1 to 10? Are they 10 to 50? Are they a huge company, 1,000 employees or more? This is going to help you narrow in on who your ideal customer is, right? Because some of you may work with small businesses, some of you may work with large businesses, and some may work with medium size. So picking the size of company that you want to work with is kind of like the first thing. Okay. The next thing is you want to think about what industries you service. Okay. So industries. So you might be somebody who's like, I work with hospitality groups, right? I work with restaurants. I work with IT companies. I work with coaches. I work with marketing agencies. You may work with construction companies, roofers. You may work with social media managers, freelancers. Maybe you're like a coach who helps freelancers. Whatever it is, those are all different parameters that you can actually find within the LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So honing in on who you're going after is going to help when you're creating your messaging to reach out to these people to generate the leads. Now, if you're somebody who is like, AJ, I can work with anybody. I'm the greatest consultant of all time. I can work with any business, any size, any amount of money. Cool. That's awesome. I didn't know that. But also, I would say pick an industry to go like very deep and stay focused on. Because if your messaging kind of is like, I help businesses grow to everybody, that doesn't really like strike me as a specialist or somebody who knows or understands my problems, even if you do. So let's say you're somebody who is like, look, I work with dental practices, chiropractors, and hair salons. Just pick one of those verticals to go after first, and then maybe in your next campaign in a month or two, you go after that other vertical and you see which one is better for you. Okay, so pick your vertical or industry that you're going to work with. Okay, third thing, job title. All right. So for job title, this is what people are going to name themselves on LinkedIn, right? So when you're over on LinkedIn, everybody has different titles. If you're working with business owners, like small businesses, right, or solopreneurs, typically those people identify as CEO, founder, owner, partner, president, right? Those are the titles that you're typically going to go after if you're looking to work with owners. If you're looking to work with decision makers and you're like, look, I work with middle-sized companies. Actually, the person who hires me is not the owner. It's often one of the, C-suite or VPs. Those are the titles I would go for. So for instance, if you're a marketing agency and you work with mid-level clients like 200 people company, like a 200 headcount company or something like that, your targets might be marketing directors, VPs of marketing, CMOs, CROs, VP of sales, like those kind of roles where you can help them do their job better. So you want to think about those job titles. But I would guess most of you are probably working with business owners. So just go with those first couple names I did. Okay. And then the last thing is you want to think about how close or connected you are to them on LinkedIn already. So on LinkedIn, there is this, instead of having a follower, you have like what is called a connection, right? There are first degree connections, second degree, and third degree. First degree are people you're connected with. They would be effectively the same as like a Facebook friend or an Instagram follower, right? Somebody who you guys follow each other, you're connected, right? I would typically say when you're building a sales prospecting audience, like when you're looking to try to get leads, you don't want your first degrees because those are probably people you've worked with, friends of yours, your mom, right? Kids you went to high school with, like those or college with. Those are not necessarily people who are leads for you. So I would typically tell you to go after second degree connections. So those are friends of friends, right? So those are maybe not your mom, but your mom has a colleague who owns a construction company and they're a great potential client for you. So you kind of open up the world of potential people to go after. And the reason why I would say to go after second degree connections is because people are more likely to connect with you if you guys have someone in common. If you just go after some stranger who's never heard of you before, you're going to have a lower acceptance rate from these connections. You're going to have less people who will choose to connect with you. Okay. So I say second degree is kind of ideal. If you have a very small LinkedIn audience, I would go as far as third degree. Third degree, these can be successful as well. This is a friend of a friend of a friend, right? So it's a little further away. So I typically try to hang out in the second degree area, but you can always go third degree if that doesn't work. Okay. So these are all the things you need to build the audience. Like I said, if you need a longer, in-depth version, I would say go over to my Sales Nav tutorial and it can walk you through the actual how to do this. Okay, so that's step one. Build your audience. Step two is to build your actual outreach messaging. So these are the messages you're going to send via LinkedIn direct message. You might send them via email. If you're really crazy, you might send them via InMail or something like that. Okay. But these are the messages you're going to send with the outcome of generating like a meeting so that you can see if they want to buy your stuff. Okay. There's kind of three main strategies when it comes to developing your outreach message. And it really depends on what your strength and what your skill set is and how you sell. Okay, so I'm going to go over all three and then allow you to kind of pick whichever one makes the most sense. And then I'll tell you the one I typically like to use. Okay, so the first one is direct messaging. Direct messaging is exactly what you think it is. If you're a video editor, right, you might go, hey, Timmy, nice to meet you. I was checking out your stuff online and it's really cool. I was wondering if you need support increasing your visibility on your social media. The reason I ask is because I'm a video editor and I could take your existing stuff and multiply it into 50 pieces of content. Are you interested? Right? That's just a very direct way to do it. If you need a template for this, you could just say, Are you interested in achieving X using Y in Z time, or without Z being thing they hate, right? So are you interested in getting thousands of impressions using video marketing without spending much of time on it, right? That would be an easy UVP. If you have it, the next thing I would say is a case study. So I recently helped AJ get 11 million impressions on LinkedIn in the last 30 days. I would like to see if we could do the same for you. Are you interested? Question mark. So it's always a question. Always end with a question because it begs an answer, and it's an easy question to answer. It's yes or no. Are you interested? Yes or no. Right? And so that's just like a direct ask. I know for some people that's like off-putting, and I don't know why. I think it's like if you have a service and you think you could help somebody and you need clients, I think it's normal to say, "Hey, do you need this?" Like, I can help you with this, right? And then the worst that they'll say is no. And I would almost make the case that if you're just doing outreach, most of the people are going to say no, but even if a percentage of them say yes, it becomes worth it. And they may say no for now and then re-engage you in weeks or months. And this happens all the time to ourselves and clients. So it's kind of like the first way. If you want more into how to go into the direct, please let me know and we'll make a video about it. Okay. The second strategy is what I would call the networking strategy. Okay. Some people call this social selling. There's entire $5,000 to $20,000 courses on LinkedIn you can buy. I mean, buy them or don't. I'm going to give you the lesson. The lesson is they just want you to network all day, right? And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But for some people, they're not the best at guiding a networking conversation to a potential sales conversation. And so it can be a drain, right? Like where you're like, I was on 20 calls this last month and none of them bought from me. And so if you have capacity and find yourself selling more socially, like, hey, I make friends and we end up supporting each other and offer a service that works really well for them, I would say go off on this strategy. If you're somebody who's like, no, I kind of want to cut through the BS. I just want to say like, this is what I have. Do you want it? And you're okay with that. I would say that, you're looking more for the direct strategy. So on a network strategy, a typical message would be very simple. It would just be something like, hey, I noticed you're also in XYZ industry. I was wondering if you'd be open to a quick 10 to 15-minute call to see how we could support each other or partner with each other. That's it. Or see if we could send each other business. Something like that, right? Something still kind of valuable, right? Because you're like, maybe we send each other business. That's the bare minimum. Again, the downside to this is you'll probably have more meetings, but you'll have lower intent on those meetings. So it just depends on like how you find yourself selling. If you're somebody who goes to like networking events or conferences and you leave with clients, this networking path might be great. You're just like a natural social seller. People want to do business with you. If you're somebody who doesn't have capacity for that, you may want to go more direct. Okay. And then there's a third option that is kind of halfway between. Okay. And the third option is what we're going to call like the sales collateral option. So what's the sales collateral option? The sales collateral option is often, again, it's taught in some of these LinkedIn guru courses or like online, or you've probably seen it. And that's where instead of you asking for a call where you can, or like trying to sell your stuff straight away or saying, let's be friends, you're kind of in the middle where you're like offering a piece of valuable like content, what we would call internally sales collateral, what you would call externally like a white paper, a training, a webinar, an event, something along those lines that can give somebody a win without even having to meet with you one-to-one. Okay. So an example of like a sales collateral training or something like that would be like, hey, I just put together this case study on how I helped Timmy increase his social media presence by 327%. Would you be interested in checking it out? That's it, right? Because then you can send them a video or a guide or a PDF where they can get all the benefit, but they don't have to talk to you because people get nervous to talk to people sometimes, especially if they think you're going to sell something. What is the benefit to you with doing this? The benefit to you is that they will consume that piece of sales collateral and then ideally reach out to you for more support. The way we've seen this most successfully is by doing like webinars, like virtual webinars, or in person, like events where you are like, hey, I'm going to go over how we make 50 pieces of content in 30 minutes a month. they're like, oh shit, I want to learn about that, right? And so they come to your webinar, you show them how to do it, and then you say, cool, now you have all the tools, you can go do it. Or if you want it to be easier, you can just hire us and we can do it for you, right? It's like a very easy, organic way to do that. It is also helpful because it's kind of like a one-to-many. So it's kind of a halfway between. I think if you have an esoteric offer, like I would make the case like a lot of business consulting is very kind of like, it almost feels fluffy to some people because they're like, I don't know what that is, right? That could be anything. You could be a former Deloitte consultant. You could be some kid who bought a course online consulting. I don't know which one you are. Like, how do I know you know what you're talking about, right? So if you're like a general business consultant, having like a webinar or something like that allows you to kind of build that relationship and show that you're a subject matter expert. So those are kind of the three paths I would say when it comes to developing your messaging. Okay. So let's move on to building the cadence for that messaging. So the cadence or the steps when you're building your outreach campaign are pretty important. So the first thing I would say is you're obviously going to send a connection request. Connecting, that's step 0, right? So, on day 0, you want to send a connection request. Now, there's a lot of debate on whether or not you should like put a blurb of stuff in that connection message. If you are reaching out to somebody who you have no connection to at all, right? And if you're going more direct, you could kind of put your pitch in the connection request. I don't typically advise it, but you could do it. I would typically recommend sending a blank connection request. I've actually, like, across tens of thousands of connection requests sent for myself and clients, the highest acceptance rate is just blank. And I think the reason why is because if you put a blurb, people presume you're selling something or presume you're like using automation tools. And so I would say, especially if you're using an automation tool, send it blank. If you're going hyper focused, you could put a little like, hey, I watched your YouTube video on how to generate leads on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. You could do that, but like, again, that's a lot of manual process. So it depends on your capacity and how many leads you're looking for. Okay. But I would typically say just a blank connection request is the first thing. The next thing you're sending is what we call a rapport message. Okay. So a rapport message is just something innocuous. It's just a way to like start the conversation. I would typically advise, once they accept a connection request, sending this about 4 hours later, right? The reason I would send it 4 hours later is because that models human behavior, right? Maybe you checked it, and a couple hours later at lunch, you notice that this person accepted, and then you send them, hey, thanks for connecting, right? Just a thank you for connecting. If you're extra friendly, you can go, how's things, right? Just a very general, like, we're good, right? Don't ask, don't pitch, don't do anything here. Even if you're going the direct route, don't do it. Then the next message you're going to send is the ask message. Okay. So the ask message I would send usually 2 days later. Okay. Ask is, in your instance, it all depends on the path you've chosen. So if you're direct, you're going to send your direct pitch. Hey, I help business owners get more leads on LinkedIn. I recently helped my client add a $7,000 a month client in 60 days. I want to see if I can do the same for you. Are you interested? Easy, right? If you're going the networking path, same thing. Hey, I just wanted to reach out and see if you're open to connect on a quick 10 to 15 minute call, see if we can partner, work on any things together. Or if you're going the sales collateral way, you're going to ask that. Hey, I'm putting together a webinar on how to get leads on LinkedIn. Would you be interested in attending? That's it. That's your ask. Okay. Very simple. 2 days later. Why 2 days later? Because nobody wants to be connected to and pitched on the same day. So give it a little bit of time, let them cool, give them a second to maybe reach out to you. You never know if they see your LinkedIn profile and they're like, oh, I need to hire this person, right? So give them a little bit of time to do that. And if you're doing content marketing, even better, because they may have already consumed some of your content before you reach out to them. Next step on this is you're going to do a follow-up message. And you'll do it 2 days later. So here, all you're doing is you're just bumping. So this is only if they haven't responded. So if they haven't responded to your ask 2 days later, you're going to say, hey, just bumping this. Is this something you're interested in? Hey, just following up here. Did you see it? Right? if you send a link to like a video or something, hey, were you able to watch my video? Something like that. Okay, so 2 more days later. If they don't respond to this, the last step is what we would call a takeaway. And this I would do 7 days later. So a takeaway is basically, look, you've given them basically a whole week, maybe 2 almost, right, to respond to you in any way. They haven't responded. What I would say is you take away your, like, you say, hey, look, clearly right now, not the best time for you. You're probably super busy. I get it. Let me know if you ever want to take me up on the above offer. And if not, all the best. Take care. That's it. Very soft, easy. You could also put like a little signature, a link to your website or something, because you do get people who are lurkers who won't respond to you, but they'll check out your website. So that's kind of the messaging cadence we typically follow for like all of our clients. There's some variation. Obviously, we customize it based on needs, but like that's what I've seen work really well for like 80 people. So feel free to completely steal this and implement it in your business too. Okay, the last thing we're going to go over. You've built your audience. You've written your message. You've built the cadence. How do you know if it's working? Great question. So we're going to go over the results and the KPIs that I would recommend for you to kind of use as like your loose structure of if this is working or not. Okay. So when you're sending a connection to LinkedIn, you want 20% connection acceptance rate. Okay. So we'll just say percentage, right? You want 20% of those people to say yes. So if you send, 100 connection requests, 20 of them should be accepted, right? You could make it work as low as 10, but I would really aim for 20 if I was you. Okay. So that's kind of the first thing. The next thing is your reply rate. Your reply rate you want at 30%. Okay. 30% reply rate. This is too much percentage. Okay. So when you send a message, you would like, for the people who connected, you want 1 out of every 3 basically to respond to you in some way. Okay. Of those people who reply to you, you want about 25% of them to be interested. Okay. How do you do that, right? How do you get 25% of people to be interested, right? Well, one, you have to be reaching the right person, and your message needs to be compelling and like interesting to get them to want to respond. Okay. In terms of the numbers, you can like draw from this, right? If you send 200 connections, right? I'm gonna erase this actually. Let's say we start with 200 connections, right? You want 20% to accept. That's about 40, right? You want 30% of those people to reply. That's about 12. And so of those 12 people who reply, 3 would be interested in an ideal situation. Okay. So if you can send within LinkedIn 200 connection requests a week, like that's what you're allowed to do, right? So if you can do this and follow these numbers, you should be generating around 3 calls per week or 12 calls per month. Right? Now there's some variation here. Could be more, could be less. Like we literally have clients who get like 1-2 calls a week. We have clients who get 1-2 calls a day. It really just depends on what your offer is and kind of what your like vibe is, right? If you go the networking route, you might get higher calls with less intent. If you go the direct route, you'll get less calls, but all those people are actually interested in potentially buying your stuff, right? So it kind of depends on what your goal is and how much capacity you have. But with just this, you should be able to generate 12 calls per month. Even if you're the worst salesperson in the world, 1 or 2 of those people will become clients, right? And so that's a pretty predictable, cost-effective way to generate leads over on LinkedIn. So there you go. You have your numbers, you have your steps, you have how to write your messages, the exact frameworks you should be using, everything, okay? So I hope you found this video helpful and you're going to utilize this stuff and go implement and build your own lead generation system over on LinkedIn. If you want an in-depth version on how to operate SalesNav, I will link my video to that training here at the end here. If you found this helpful, please let me know down below. If you have questions, let me know and I will answer them. Thank you so much for making it this far in the video. It means a lot to me. Have a magical rest of your day. Make sure you subscribe and, like and click as many buttons as possible. I would appreciate that. Okay. And have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.